Our colleague Alison Comyn has been speaking to Kevin Barry. She began by asking him if the protagonist is more like him rather than Lennon.
It's a version. I mean, to use the Joycean term, what it tries to be is a portrait of the artist. So you extrapolate on any artist and bits of your own stuff to try and give a likeness of a particular artist. As very often with my stories, it was the place was the initial spark, and just going out on my bike around Clew Bay in the summer and seeing all the tiny islands down there, and always wondering which one was his, you know.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the thing that sat in the back of my mind for a few years before I realised I was writing a novel. He gets a great sidekick called Cornelius O'Grady, who's his driver and fixer. And actually it was when Cornelius started to mouth off a bit that the book really came to life, once John had a sidekick. And I realised that it was a very old-fashioned novel in lots of ways. It was Don Quixote. John is tilting at windmills and he's got his sidekick and they're trying to figure out the meaning of life.
Exactly. Well, now look, you've mentioned before that dreariness could possibly be seen as a source of writing for others and of course for yourself, and it says in the novel it's about the dark places and what you find there. Now, you're the same age as me. We grew up studying Peg Sayers. She had an awful miserable life. Could that dreariness been an inspiration for you?
I hear this all the time and I think it's a wonderful book. It's great. It's kind of a comic tragedy almost. So many children fell off cliffs picking turf that you can't but laugh after a while, you know.
And there are some dark places, I suppose, in this particular book, in Beetlebone. But is that dark humour for you, or is it dreariness?
Yeah.
Where do you get that inspiration?
I think there's a kind of a melancholy in the book, but melancholy isn't depression, you know. It's a very different thing. It's a very natural human feeling. There can be a kind of a sweetness to it, and I think John, as all artists are, is slightly possessed by this melancholy. I had to get to the actual west of John's Island as part of the process for this book, and he was into primal scream therapy, so I had to scream out there and see how that went when I did.
How did it go?
Great. I'm right as rain since. All has gone very well since. No, it's yeah. I when we come back from Dublin or wherever and cross the bridge in Carrick-on-Shannon, and you know you're in the west, and something in me does kind of settle and ease, and I go, lovely, you know, back in the civilized parts again. I love it. Yeah, I grew up in suburbs, so it was weird to find myself living really in the countryside, in the sticks. But I love it now. There are no distractions from the writing for me, you know.
Now, I did mention at the start that you had won many awards. The city of Bohan, of course, won a major award, the International Literary Award. Did you know when you were writing it that you had something very special?
With City of Bohan, actually, I knew very quickly when I started it that I was definitely felt I was doing something that felt quite new for me anyway. I knew I was writing in actual demented language of actual Irish cities like Limerick and Cork in a way that maybe hadn't been put down very much on the page before. It was purely from the way working class people in those cities use the English language in a magnificent way. And that gave me a lot of energy for City of Bohan. Beetlebone was much more difficult to write. I really had to dig it out because he is such an iconic figure. And to get the voice right for him took endless drafts and an air of mounting hysteria in the working shed before. It took 2 or 3 years before I was starting to get the voice in tune for him. Once I had that, the rest of the process was really enjoyable. Once you have the voices, you can invent at will across the page.
Now, we have one thing in common. We both started in local newspapers, in a local newsroom, a rich source of inspiration, I suppose, certainly for novels like.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, and I guess it's a really old-fashioned way for a writer to come through now. It would have been the traditional way. You'd work your way up through newspapers and magazines and so forth. But yeah, I was a cub reporter in Limerick, doing the courts, doing council meetings, and not realising at the time that I was researching a novel called City of Bohan, you know. But I was absolutely getting a glimpse of how a small city worked and operated, and all the kind of fun and malevolence and the sharp humour around the edges of that. The best research is the research you don't realise you're doing.
Unless you've been a journalist, I suppose you won't understand the dark humour and the really dark humour within a newsroom.
Limerick District Court and newspaper offices. And I remember actually when I used to do shifts for the Evening Echo in Cork, one of my jobs, I used to come in at 7 in the morning and I used to have to ring every Garda station in County Cork. Do you have anything last night, lads? No, not now. We might have something today. And you just get as gold, you know.
Oh, it's just completely,
gold.
And completely unexpected as well. You never know what's going to happen. I love this description of you. If Roddy Doyle and Nick Cave were able to procreate, you might be the result of it. A disturbing image.
You've planted an image in my mind now.
A disturbing image.
That's not going to go away.
Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I hold both artists in great regard. I leave that at that.
Listen, what's next then for?
I have 2 kind of short plays on the desk, so God knows if they'll work out or not. And then I think I'm going to do a second Bohan novel starting sometime in the new year. I'm going to go back out to the Quare place and see how they're getting on.
Right, and what can we expect out of that then?
Nothing good. Nothing good, I'd say. They won't be up to anything pleasant out there.
Now, I'm sure many of you will have seen the film Noble, following the life of children's rights campaigner Christina Noble. I think the movie is top of the Irish DVD charts at the moment. The Dublin-born activist is best known for setting up a foundation in Vietnam over 20 years ago, which has, over the years, changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of street children and orphans for the better. Christina spent some of her childhood in an orphanage and also slept rough on the streets of Dublin. I spoke to her earlier about her remarkable story. Christina, look, your story has been well told in Ireland, a rocky start to say the least. A lot of people would have sunk beyond trace with a start in life like that, but you managed to rise above it. Why was that?
I'd no choice. Well, it's true, I'd no choice. Either the only way is up or down, and I felt I had too much to give inside of me. There's too much I had promised myself I would do. That was like singing and tap dancing, and I had a dream. Like I always seem to have dreams, you know, and that would be true. And I also said if I grow up, you know, maybe I can help children. I would understand them. All the babies, come on, all of you. Oh, you have to be in their place to understand them, you know, kids. Like Keith said, no experience ever becomes real until it is experienced. Even a proverb is no proverb to you until your life has illustrated it. And I don't like all these quotes sometimes, but that's a really true one. You have to live it to understand it. You can read it, you can imagine it, maybe, but you live it and it's different. And it's there's pluses in it as well. You learn a lot from it. Don't think it's all poor old me stuff. There's the sad times and there's the loneliness is something very hard to explain to you. And the rejection as well, you know, the pain, the fear that goes along with it.
I love you as I've never loved before. Since first I saw you on the village green.
Have you any idea how many children's lives you've changed over the years?
Yeah, I'd rather say we've changed because it's a great team of people. Look, it's beyond anything myself. I didn't start out thinking I'm going to save the world. The idea was a dream. Some children in trouble in Vietnam, go out there and help them. But altogether, over 1 million kids, and I'm talking like over something around 700,000 children itself, and then over 300,000, we know it's over that number, community-based projects and families and children, you know what I mean, with the families, and community-based, like the revolving loan programs all down the Delta region for the women, you know, who had no way of taking care of their children. And that's been highly successful. That loans go on and on and on.
Just brought him up from the manhole. This little kid, we just put a coat on him. Look at him. It's 40 degrees below zero.
Where to begin? The only thing I can say, there's only one way to begin, which is at the beginning. And I took it one day at a time. And I used to sing that song every morning, you know, One day at a time.
Gloria, was it?
Sweet
Yeah.
Jesus. Our work is great. Our people are great. And the Irish surgeons and the Irish doctors who come out, men and women, and do brilliant teaching and training out there with us. I'm not going to justify it. The kids can tell you. When they grow up, they graduate, and you see their hats going in the air, a whole stack of them. You say, they say, we've done it, Ma. We made it, Ma. And I said, no. You've made it when you have a good job and you got your own home. Then you've made it.
You give so much of yourself to each and every child. I've seen you're pouring love on them. Do you not become exhausted?
I become exhausted, not from the children, never. Never, 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 never. No. I become exhausted from raising money. Not easy, not easy.
How do you find the time then to also have some projects in Ireland, back in your home country? What have you got running here?
There's quite a lot of places empty, isn't there? Yeah. I'd love to get the few bob, and I'd go in there and I'd get a whole stack of people from the street to get them all showered and scrubbed up and give them a talking to and say, you want a home? Let's make one. And work with them. And you wouldn't believe what we can do with very little money.
I can sense your frustration that here in your own home country, for the first time in years, we've got whole families who are homeless.
Yes.
And do you feel that you would have a solution?
It's easy to make it happen. What does a human being really need? First of all, they need food in their belly. They need nourishment, soul nourishment, because a lot of them will be hurt and damaged. They need a roof over their heads to keep them safe, really safe. They have to have showers. They have to have dignity. You know, they have to learn new skills again. I know it's easier said than done. I'm not stupid. I walk on the streets around the world and wars and everything. I know. But I'm just saying, nothing is impossible. It's only impossible if you want it to be impossible. We could make it happen.
How are we going to cope then with refugees coming into Ireland if we're trying to look after our own?
If you don't look after these people, our own people, how can you look after the refugees? Because they'll revolt against them. They'll revolt against them. They'll suffer the consequences of what these don't have and what they're going to get.
So we shouldn't be taking in refugees?
No, we should take in refugees. But come here, I tell you, if you have a house, right, and you've got 5 kids, one of them is after being in England, and they come back, you say, you can't come in here, I'm taking one of the refugees in. You have to go and sleep wherever you sleep. It wouldn't work. You wouldn't do that as a mum, would you? So this is what I'm talking about. There is a way for both. You have to find a way to reach the hearts of people on the streets. They get their heart working again and the soul, get the soul moving again, the soul love, that energy up again, to believe in themselves again. Look, I don't want to sound big-headed, but I'm good at that, you know.
You've received so many awards. I couldn't even name the awards over the years, for you and for the foundation as well, of course the Pride of Ireland as well. Yeah. What are you most proud of, though?
The one that touches me, because I know what Mommy would be feeling up in heaven. And my mum and my dad was an alcoholic, I know. They'd be very proud, particularly in the way we were left, you know. Would be the Pride of Ireland award. I think that's all of the awards in Ireland, really. I don't like to single anything out. See, the Pride of Ireland, I mean, how could I be the Pride of Ireland? Do you know what I mean?
Very easily.
And guess what? And China as well. I got one in China. Did you know? I'm a doctor in China. So, yeah.
I won't argue with you there, definitely not.
Did you hear that? The girl from Maribel Lane, huh?